Please turn to page 70 for Stage 6 Imaginative Narrative Writing. The difference between Stage 5 Imaginative Narrative Writing and Stage 6 Imaginative Narrative Writing is really in the beginning. At Stage 5, we had a story opening and we had sequenced a few actions at the beginning of the story. But at Stage 6, we're going to kick that up a notch. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have a come alive box in the beginning of the story, which means we're going to develop the character and the setting, creating character traits as well as the mood, the atmosphere of the setting. This is a fabulous way for your students to make their stories more sophisticated. We're not trying to say, please write more sentences. At this level, we're really looking for students to develop those skills to create characters and settings, and we'll do that with the Come Alive box at the beginning of the story. If you recall, one of our introductory lessons was the Come Alive box. We did movie scripts and we did the Come Alive box. Now the Come Alive box is absolutely critical once you hit this Stage 6 level. So if you've been working with the students on Come Alive boxes since the beginning of the year, this Stage 6 is going to be so much easier for them to master. What materials will you need for Stage 6? We have our Stage 6 Imaginative Narrative Chant so that your students will be introduced to this stage and understand what they need in order to independently write at this level. On page 71, you will find your at-a-glance teacher sheet, which has all the steps and information you need in order to teach this lesson to the students. On page 72 is your checklist. This checklist has all the detailed information that you need in order to evaluate and assess your students' writing. Use this after the students write their paper to make sure that they have all the essential elements for content organization, sentences, and mechanics at this Stage 6 level. In addition to the checklist is the Stage 6 chart that you should display so that your students can follow along with the steps in order to write at this level. The great news is you can just download this chart in an 8.5 by 14 legal size format, and it also is in color so that you can display and your students can follow along. On page 73 is a sample organizer. Matched with this organizer is the finished product of a student's writing from this Stage 6 level. You will also need narrative writing tools. On page 75 are all the blackline masters that you will need in order to make these tools. What I've done is I've cut the tools up and made them into little decks of cards or easy to use manipulatives, and then I stored them in this little tub. In this tub, what you'll see is whenever I need anything to do with the beginning of the story, choosing a character or the hook or the problem, I have those cards in these two little pockets. On the reverse side of this tub, I have the actions in the story. In this case, I have my do, say, think cards. Those cards will help me plan out, do I want to have an action? Do I want dialogue, thoughts? And then I also have a deck of emotion cards that help me come up with much more interesting ideas for those actions, dialogue, or thoughts. And of course, I have my salt and pepper shaker to add fancy words, along with my 5 senses cards to help the kids decide what kind of words we want to add for fancy words in our writing. This wonderful little holder will help you take all these tools that I have in this section so that you can easily grab them when you're teaching the lesson. In this section of narrative writing for the online training, you will find the narrative writing tools video. In that video, I'll go through every single page of this tool section, and I will give you in detail how to use each tool, how to store it. So if you need more information, just go to that video so that you can prepare your narrative writing tools tub and create all of your manipulatives. Please turn to page 70 to start our imaginative narrative writing lesson at Stage 6. Before we start by telling a chart, make sure all your students have a blank piece of legal size paper that you have already tri-folded before you passed out to each one of your students. You don't want to have to Xerox off and give them an organizer. If they can create their own, then they can write a story anywhere. They don't rely on you once they learn the steps. They all have a blank organizer, which they will eventually draw all the parts on as we get into the lesson for their beginning, middle, and end of their stories. So the students have a blank piece of paper. You have a blank piece of paper underneath your document viewer, or you'll present the lesson using a big piece of butcher paper. Make sure you have the steps displayed for the students to follow along. And now we will begin our lesson. Remember, we're all going to, at the beginning, when you're first introducing a stage, write a story. In this case, we're writing an imaginative story together so that they can learn the steps. If everyone was trying to learn the steps and write a different story at the same time, it's very confusing and you're basically going to be working one-on-one with each student. The idea is to be efficient in your teaching and effective. And to be efficient means that we're all together going to be learning these steps, and to be effective means that we're going to do it at a nice pace, not having to work one-on-one and have children wait throughout the process. So together, we'll follow these steps. The whole goal is for students to learn the steps. Once they learn the steps, then you're going to slowly release them into partners, likability partners, where they can actually start following the steps and together as partners write their own stories. Now, when you visualize that in your classroom, remember, you may have some kids who are working in partners, but you still may have a group of children that are not ready to go and work in partners because they don't understand the steps at this point. They're your students that need more repetitions. They need more examples of these types of lessons. So you're with them in that small group, again, helping them write a story where that small group and you will be doing the same story because you're focusing on the steps. Let's get started in our lesson. And I'm going to now treat this as if I were working with the boys and girls. Boys and girls, we are going to write an imaginative narrative story at stage 6. Wow, everybody go, ooh, ooh, I know, this is exciting. We're gonna write at a level stage 6. Everyone say, what's a stage 6 imaginative narrative writing? Go ahead and give it to me. So the kids ask me that, and I say, thank you for asking. Put your hands together, and let's say our chant so we can know what all the parts of this type of story is going to be at a stage 6. Pretend like you're holding a book and open it up and say, every story has a beginning, middle, end. Let's go back to the beginning. In the beginning, the setting and character better come alive. That's right, they better come alive. Because if they don't come alive and they don't seem real, is anybody going to be interested in your story? No, they are not going to care. The characters are going to seem flat. They're not going to seem real. Who wants to read a story where nothing seems real? So what do we need to do? We need to make them come alive. That's why we're going to start our story with a come alive box to make our characters and our setting come alive. Because if we don't, then what will the reader do? They will close the book. They don't want to read our story. Let's go back and say the whole thing again. Every story has a beginning, middle, end. In the beginning, the setting and character need to come alive or the reader will close the book. Once the setting and character comes alive, then there's a problem. In the middle are actions where the character will do, say, or think to try to solve the problem. In the end, what happened? How did the character solve the problem? Was the character successful or unsuccessful at solving the problem? Then the last thing we're going to say is, who cares? Theme. What was the message of the story? What did the character learn, feel, wish after this experience happened to him or her? Let's try the whole chant one more time, and then we're going to go to our organizer and make it. And when we make our organizer, the chant will help us understand it. Every story has a beginning, middle, end. In the beginning, the character and setting better come alive, or the reader will close the book. Once they come alive, then there is a problem. In the middle, the character will go through actions, where the character will do, say, or think to try to solve the problem. In the end, what happened? How did the character solve their problem? Were they successful or unsuccessful at solving their problem? Who cares? What was the message of the story? What did the character learn, feel, or wish after this experience happened to him or her? We know all the parts of our story and we know what's at a stage 6 and why we're doing this. We are going to go to our organizer and get organized. As I'm filling in the organizer and following the steps of this lesson, don't forget, page 71 has all the steps there for you teachers to follow along so that you can understand what I'm doing and also take notes so that you can use this page when you're teaching the lesson to your students. Here we have our blank piece of paper. We had our chant, and what did we say in our chant? Every story needs a beginning, middle, end. So you will go to the folds in the paper, draw a line on each one, and now we have our beginning, middle, end boxes. In the beginning, we are going to have a line at the top, a box, and that's where we're going to plan our Come Alive box. This top line will be your story opening or your hook. Below that is the box where we will make our setting and character come alive. And then below it, there's an X, and that's going to be for the problem. So here we have all the different parts to the beginning of the story. Our story opening with our hook, come alive box, problem. In the middle are going to be the actions, 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 where we do, say, or think. We can't list how many those are going to be because as we plan the story, we'll make that decision at that point. In the end, we will have a line halfway across that ending box at the top so we can identify what happened at the end of the story. Character have, were they successful or unsuccessful at solving their problem? And we'll leave plenty of room because we may want to have some more actions, thoughts, dialogue after that. And then all the way at the bottom, we'll have TCR. That's going to be our secret formula we use for our theme or the message of the story, which is transition, character, reflection. We've labeled our organizer. Now we're ready to start planning our story. This page is to plan all the parts of our story, all the ideas, and make sure they're sequenced in the right place. After we have all the ideas planned, then we're going to go back on this organizer and we're going to plan out how to say the sentences. And finally, we may even put punctuation on this organizer for students that need it. Let's get started. We're ready to plan a story. For our first lesson, everyone will be writing the same story together so we can focus on the steps. Please don't plan the whole organizer before you present this to the students. And the reason for that is the steps will truly make a story. If you have a story already planned on an organizer, then the children are just going to try to guess what you came up with. The idea here is for you to teach the steps and how the steps will create a story. Let's get started. First thing we're going to do is go to the beginning of our story. And we're going to go into our Come Alive box and draw our character and our setting. Before we do that, though, we have to come up with who is our character? A person, an animal, an imaginary character. Where is our setting? And then once we decide on that, we're going to draw a picture of our character and our setting. So in this case, what we decided was we were going to draw about a puffin. We had been reading about puffins and their baby pufflings, and we thought, oh, wouldn't it be great to write a story using a mother and a father puffling and their little baby? So we decided that's what we would do. And what's wonderful about writing stories about different things that you've been reading is that you can also pull different vocabulary words and rich language from those stories to use in your own. In this case, we decided we were going to write about a mommy and dad puffin, and we were going to have the setting out on an uninhabited island where puffins live because we had learned that they lived on these islands. So here we are ready to draw our picture. When I'm ready to draw the picture, I have to think to myself, who am I going to draw in this picture? I'm going to draw the mother. When I draw her, I have to think, ape the character. A, appearance. What is she going to look like? P, personality. What kind of personality does she have? Oh, she's brave, she's kind, she's loving. What kind of emotion does she have in this picture? Ooh, she's going to be out in the ocean because she's hungry. She has to feed herself. So let's see. She's brave, she's kind, she's loving. She's hungry though. And now let's look at what her appearance would look like. She's out in the ocean. She's probably bobbing in the water and her eyes are looking around searching for food. There's the basic talk that we have together before we draw our picture of our character. So I'm ready to draw my character, but I need a setting also. And the setting needs to have an atmosphere. She's ready to go and get her food, but she's over on this uninhabited island. What's the atmosphere like there? Is it warm and cozy, or is it a little dangerous, a little scary out there? Maybe it's a little scary and gloomy and dark. We're ready to draw our picture of our setting. Let's have our uninhabited island. We know there was a lot of tall grass on that island. We know that her baby's going to be in this long burrow with his egg at the bottom. And long burrow with grass at the bottom. There's the baby in the burrow. We know that there's all types of bushes all over the island. Also, there's cliffs with rocks, jagged rocks. So we drew the island. And around the island are waves that crash on it, big swells of water in the ocean. What type of weather would there be? Oh, it's overcast in that area a lot, so let's put some clouds up. Let's draw the mother, Puffin. We know that she's hungry and she's out in the ocean looking for food. So we have her out in the ocean. She's looking for food. Her feathers are sort of flapping around, trying to find the food in the water. After drawing your character and your setting in your Come Alive box, then you need to go to the problem. We know that the mother is looking for food. We know the baby's hungry. We know that there's a daddy, but he's not in the picture right now. We just have the mom and the baby, and we have this island, and we're ready to plan our problem. Here's a couple of tricks to help you come up with a problem, because sometimes kids can't come up with ideas, or they always come up with the same ideas. So I'm going to give you a couple of ways to help them. One is, a problem in a story is always about change. So together the students and I can come up with a problem by saying, let's look at the picture we're creating here. This is like a movie. This is what our readers are going to see when they first start reading our story. The baby's hungry, the mommy's out in the ocean, she's hungry, she's gonna feed herself, she wants to get some food for the baby. Everything's happening in this picture right now. But we have to get to some sort of a problem. To get to a problem or change, what you do is you look at this picture, the Come Alive picture, and say, the change can be something that changes in this picture. Something I see in this picture causes change, causes some sort of a problem. Or the change can come from the outside, what we don't see in the picture. Something new comes in and causes a problem in this story. So we know that the change could be something in the picture or from the outside. And that change could be something in nature. Maybe in the picture I see the clouds and the clouds change and the weather becomes very dangerous. That could be a problem in the story. So that could be nature. Maybe the problem could be somebody else, something else comes into the story. Maybe a big shark comes in the story and starts to attack her. Or maybe she's having a problem with herself. Maybe she's worried that she's not going to find food and she's not going to be able to feed her baby. So we have that whole idea of change and something from the outside or within this picture causes the change. If you can't come up with an idea from just saying, let's have some change come from in the picture or something from the outside goes into the picture, the Come Alive box, I have many cards in which kids can just pick a card in order to come up with a problem. So these are problem cards for stories. If we can't come up with a problem, I'll fan out my cards. They could pick a card and they could say, oh look, the character wants or needs to change. So maybe our mother changed into something, like something magical occurred in the story and she changed into something, or maybe her baby changed into something. Like for instance, magical rain came down his burrow and he changed into something else. These cards are a wonderful way to give students other ideas for problems in the story. Boys and girls, you know a problem can be a change in our Come Alive box, or we can choose a problem from our deck of cards. Here's a problem from our deck of cards. The character gets tricked. Somebody in this story is going to trick the character. Now at your table, talk to each other. Do you want to have a character come into the story who tricks the mommy or tricks the baby? Or do you want to come up with your own idea where there's some sort of change that occurs in this Come Alive box? Talk to each other and we'll decide on our problem. All right, we have our different ways to come up with a problem. I pick a student's name and they tell us that they want to have a problem by changing something in the Come Alive box. Great. What do you want to have change? Something in the picture here or something from the outside comes in and causes a change? And they decide a big shark is coming into the picture and trying to attack the mommy. So we go over here to our problem line, and here's a shark. Big shark is trying to attack the mommy in the water. We have our Come Alive box. The mom's going out to get some food to feed herself and her baby. And then the problem occurs where a shark comes out of nowhere and wants to attack the mom. We have these labeled. Where do we go next? What are we going to label next in our story? We're going to label the end. And the reason why is once we know a problem, then we're going to go to the end box and we're going to decide on the solution. Is the mom going to be successful or unsuccessful at solving her problem? So she, in the beginning, is trying to feed her baby but gets attacked by a shark. Let's go to the end of the story and make this a successful ending. What would be happening at the end of the story where she would be successful? She's feeding her baby. So she didn't get captured by the shark. We know that now, and she's feeding her baby. So let's have the little baby here with a fish, and maybe here's the mommy feeding it to him. Notice we're just drawing quick little picture to identify what happens in that scene of the story. If you don't feel comfortable drawing pictures, write a couple of keywords. Don't write out sentences though. This is keywords or quick drawings. We have our beginning of our story mapped out. We know our ending. Now we're ready to figure out the middle. Because I know the problem and I know the solution, then I can say the problem in the story, the mother wants to feed her baby, but gets attacked by a shark. The ending, she's feeding her baby. How do we go from being attacked by a shark to her feeding her baby at the end? What happened in the middle? What caused that change? What actions occurred in the middle of the story where the character would do, say, or think? Let's plan our first action, write a number 1 with the line, in our story. The problem that happens next is this. A shark pops out of nowhere and is ready to attack the mommy. We go to the first action in the middle of the story and I'll say to the kids, okay, what happens next? The shark pops out and is ready to attack the mommy. What happens next? And then the kids have a difficult time coming up with an idea. If that's the case, take out your emotion cards. And the reason for this is because these emotion cards will help your kids come up with more creative ideas. And that's because that's how stories work. When you read a story, an event happens and then the characters feel something. Well, if you can't come up with an idea, then pick an emotion and that emotion will help you come up with, what event would happen so that the character will end up having this emotion. So let's try it. The shark is going to attack the mom. What happens next? We can't come up with an idea. I fan out the emotion cards and say to the kids, let's make it interesting. Let's pick an emotion card to help us come up with our idea. So a student picks a card and they come up with silly, embarrassed. We have to decide what's going to happen in this first action where a character is going to feel silly or embarrassed. First, we have to decide which character. Is the mother Puffin? Is she going to feel embarrassed or is it going to be the shark? Let's say the shark. So what happened next? Something happened and the shark became embarrassed. So let's say that he was embarrassed because he went to grab her and he missed her. So here's the shark with his teeth and she, poof, got away. Let's go to our second action. At this point in the lesson, the children in the classroom know the shark didn't get the mom. He's embarrassed. He feels really embarrassed. And we're going to say, what's going to happen next? Should we have a new action or should we have a reaction, boys and girls? Should we have one of the characters thinking or saying something? We decide that we're going to have the mother puffling say something to the shark as she got away from him. On number 2, draw a line. Put a dialogue bubble. What would the mother puffling do? Let's have her flying away. Oh, she escaped sure death. She's flying away from that mean shark. What is she going to say to him? Talk to each other. So they all start talking, and then we get ideas. The children and I start coming up with different things to say. Sometimes when kids start saying dialogue, they get a little lost. So you may want to give examples. Oh, the mother puffling, she's flying away. Look, boys and girls, I'm acting out the story as I'm thinking. I'm being the mother puffling. She's flying away. Oh, and what is she going to say to that mean shark? You meanie, you almost made my child motherless by eating me. Maybe she could say something of that sort. Or maybe she's saying something to the shark like, you'll never get me, you cruel shark. Talk to each other. What's something that the mother could say? So they all talk. And they got some ideas from you, and then you'll take different ideas and finally choose one. At this point, everyone could be writing the same dialogue, or you could tell the children, you can write your own, you can change it around. I like to let them have a little variation at this point so they can throw in their own ideas. In this case, we decided the mother puffling said, how dare you try to eat a mother? Let's go to the marker line where we have to say who is yelling this. How could we say this? She shouted, comma. We have our dialogue. She shouted, how dare you try to eat a mother? And the reason why I put she, because we already have mother in her dialogue. Woo, 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 redundant police, redundant police. Good writers don't repeat the same important words over and over again. So we want to be very careful of repeating these words over and over. It doesn't sound good when we're redundant. We have the mother saying, how dare you try to eat a mother? Now we're going to touch our shoulders and say, what happened next after the mother puffin said, how dare you eat a mother? We need to make our story interesting. Let's pick an emotion card if we can't come up with an idea. If your kids can come up with an idea, don't choose an emotion card. This is your safety net so that you can continue with a story and have interesting ideas. If you do choose a card, take out whatever emotion you have previously used. So if I use silly or embarrassed, I'm going to take that out of the deck. Let's pick a card for what happens next after she escapes from the shark. We come up with scared. Uh-oh, something's going to happen next in the story. Who's going to be scared? Let's have the mother scared. What would make her scared? She's out in the ocean and something happens to scare her. What could it be? So again, I have the kids talk to each other. We're going to write a number 3 here. And we're going to decide on what's going to happen that made her scared. So the kids talk to each other and somebody says, oh, she was diving down in the ocean and she got caught in seaweed and she couldn't get loose from the seaweed. Okay, that's good. So there she is. She was diving below, ready to get a fish for her dinner. And then what happened? She got caught in seaweed. This is a good story. Let's write number 4. Do we want to continue to the next action for number 4? Or do we want a reaction? Do we want the mother puffling saying something or thinking something? Let's go ahead and have her think something. If she thinks I'm being strangled and I'm caught in this net of seaweed, what would she be thinking? Why is she here in the ocean? She's trying to catch a fish for her little baby. So down below, again, act it out. She's down below, she's caught, and she's thinking. What is she thinking? Give a few examples. Oh no, my baby will starve to death. Oh no, my baby's counting on me. Oh my goodness, I may drown down here. Turn to each other, tell each other, what is she thinking? So, we put our thinking bubble up here. I choose different ideas from the students, and we record what the mother is thinking. The mother may be saying to herself, I could drown down here, or what will happen to my baby if I drown? You could write out the whole sentence or just the first few words, ... Put your question mark, since she's asking a question, close quotation mark. When the students get pretty good at writing their dialogue or thoughts, putting quotation marks in, you want to show them that they don't need to write out the entire sentence or sentences each time on their organizers for those particular parts. Instead, just write a couple of key words to jog your memory when you're writing that part as you orally rehearse it. So we decided, instead of writing out the whole sentence, we wrote out a couple of words and we knew that we could remember what the mother was asking. So who said this? The mother. Now up here, I said she shouted. I used mother here. Down here, I already have a sentence in between. So I could say she again, or I could say the mother bird. And the mother bird wondered, oh yes, that's much better. What will happen to my baby if I drown? Let's go to our next action in the story. Oh, that's number 5. Let me show you a trick here. This is going to be our last action before we get to the end of the story. We don't pick an emotion card. Here's this last action in the middle. Something has to happen in this action so that we can get to the next where she's feeding her baby. So what would make sense? Here in actions 3 and 4, she's caught in a web of seaweed. Then something's going to happen in this 5th part right here in order for her to get to the ending where she's feeding her child. What happens here? It has to make sense. And this is why it's so important to label the ending, so that these middle actions can be important, but they also lead to the end. So I have the students talk to each other, and they decide that a big wave crashes down, untangles her, and a fish pops into her mouth. Hey, that sounds great. So let's have a wave crash on the seaweed. There's the mother, and a fish pops in her mouth from the wave. We created that quick little picture of what happened. We go to the end of the story, and there she is feeding her baby. We have our beginning, we have our middle, we have our ending action where she's feeding her baby. Can we add a little bit more onto the ending now? Could we add more actions where the character is going to do something? Should we have the character say something or think something? Let's draw a line. The baby's eating the fish. What do we want to do? Do we want to have one of them saying, thinking, or doing? Maybe we could have the mother say something. So as her baby's eating, the mother says, "I love you, darling." And we could say the mommy bird or the mommy says, "I love you, darling." And maybe we could have an action from the baby. Here they are. The baby snuggled the mother. That's a great ending. So we have our beginning come alive box and our problem. Our actions in the middle. We have our ending with some dialogue and an action that followed up that ending part of the story. The next step is, once we have all the different parts in place, is to go back and create the sentences. So look what we've done. We've put all the ideas in order and they are interesting. Now we're ready to go and create the sentences. Go to the beginning box. Notice the top line on the organizer. That's our story opening. We need to choose our story opening, our hook for the beginning sentence of our story. What are we going to choose? Is it going to be dialogue? Will it be thoughts? Or should we have SC arrow, setting character action? Let's use the setting character action secret formula. Label our organizer at the top, SC arrow. The S is for setting. Setting tells us time and place. C is character. Who's doing the action? Arrow is action. What is that character doing? We look at the beginning box and we look at time. Time, when I'm looking at my picture, could be daytime, nighttime, weather, or time of year. I think we're going to pick the weather. We'll draw a cloud here to show that it's a cloudy day. Once I have time that this is happening, now I need the location, where this is happening, the place. So we know that it's going to be on this uninhabited island. So I'm just going to draw a little island there. Notice I'm drawing quick little pictures. I could Just write keywords or pictures. After drawing these couple of pictures, let me orally rehearse what I have so far. On a dark, gloomy day, near an island, near an uninhabited island, near a small island. Character. Who is doing the action in my story? Mother Puffin. So I'm just going to have the little Mother Puffin there. Let's go back and let's say it again. Ready? On a dark, gloomy day near an uninhabited island, Mother Puffin, action. What is she doing here? She landed in the ocean. So I'm just going to draw an arrow with some water to show she landed in the ocean. There's my starter sentence. On a dark, gloomy day near an uninhabited island, Mother Puffin landed in the ocean. I can come back and I can fix that a little later, but I have my starter sentence. After that starter sentence, we need to go to our come alive box and begin the process of labeling the important parts of this picture to make it come alive. In order to do that, we have to go back and label the nouns first. And when we label the nouns, we look at the picture and go, what on this picture is important for the reader to see, feel, taste, touch, to know in order to make this picture come alive, for them to think that the character setting is alive. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to first label, let's go to the setting. How about the grass on the island? And how about the burrow that the little bird is in? And the cliff? What about the mother's wings? And what about the swells of the ocean? Now I have many different parts of this picture that I want the reader to see, to come alive. Maybe over here also the waves. And the reason why I'm picking these certain items is because these are the parts of the picture that are really important for the reader to make the mood of the setting come alive. If they see the grass and they see the waves and this burrow and the swells of the ocean, the setting will start to seem real to them. If they see the mother's wings flapping, and what else on her body could we do? Oh, maybe her eyes or her beak. So I'm going to write down a couple of ideas. This does not mean I will use all of them. I'm just right now brainstorming which ones will be important to describe to my reader. After I have the nouns, then I'll go back and add fancy words. So I will go back and say what kind of to the nouns. And then I will add adjectives above each noun. Let me show you what I mean. What kind of grass would be on this uninhabited island? So that way I try to come up with describing words that are going to fit the mood of this setting. For the mother, what kind of wings would the mother bird have as she's landing in the ocean? So what you're doing when you're saying that what kind of statement is you're helping to stay in this picture and come up with descriptions that are precise, that match what you want to get across to the reader. What if your children have a tough time coming up with describing words? So we know we have our word bank that you could go to for adjectives if your children have a tough time coming up with their own. Let's add our adjectives. What kind of burrow would this little puffling be in? A long burrow, a dark long burrow, a skinny long burrow. Ooh, let's write skinny, long. The grass, what kind of grass would be on this uninhabited island? Tall, thick. Cliff, what kind of cliff is on this island? Jagged. What kind of waves are coming towards this island? Violent. What kind of beak would the mommy bird have? Long. Sharp. What kind of swells would be in the ocean? High, rolling. What kind of eyes would the mommy bird have if she was looking for fish? Her big round eyes. What kind of wings does the mommy bird have as she's looking for fish in the ocean? Powerful. Once we've labeled all our describing words, we can go back and see if there's any verbs that we can place underneath the nouns. The tall grass. Did the tall grass do anything on this uninhabited island? What action could I put there to make a powerful verb? So the tall grass waved. The high rolling swells, what did they do? Maybe they rocked the mother, so we'll put rocked. Her big round eyes, what did they do? They searched. Her powerful wings, what did they do? They flapped. So I'm just coming up with my different ideas. The violent waves, what did they do? They crashed. And if I can come up with verbs, then great. The jagged cliff, what about it? Maybe I could just say it was speckled with rocks, jagged rocks. So I've added verbs to almost all the different nouns there. I have my story opening. I have my come alive box labeled. I'm ready now to orally rehearse this part of the story because I need to make the sentences. Once I had all the ideas down, I need to start forming the sentences. We had our hook at the top, which we decided we were going to use SC arrow this time, and then our come alive box to make the setting and character come alive. Let's practice saying this first part of their story. On a dark, gloomy day near an uninhabited island, notice I'm acting it out. And as I act this out and say it, the kids and I are going to do this together. And we're going to share how to say the sentences together. So this is a lot of oral rehearsal using academic language and revising on the spot. So you're not memorizing, you're trying to create better sentences as you go back and keep repeating. So on a dark, gloomy day near an uninhabited island, Mother Puffin landed in the salty ocean, searching for food. Off in the distance sat her baby puffling in a long, skinny burrow, surrounded by thick, tall grass that waved on the surface of the island. Near the edge of the land was a tall, jagged cliff speckled with sharp rocks. She flapped her powerful wings and poked her sharp beak at the water, hoping to catch a little morsel of food. There we go. That may be how we say our story. Let's go back and say it another way. So notice I'm going to choose different ideas this time. It was a dark day near that uninhabited island when Mother Puffin landed in the water searching for a little fish to feed her baby puffling. Her powerful wings flapped as she landed on the high rolling swells of the ocean. Off in the distance, violent waves crashed against the island. Above the waves were jagged cliffs and tall waving grass that surrounded the little tiny burrow in which the baby puffling was waiting for its mommy bird's meal. I have now practiced this many different ways. I'm going to say it over and over, and I'll have the kids now practice saying the beginning of the story here. So I walk around, we share different ways to say this part of the story. Once we feel pretty comfortable with how we're forming our sentences, then we'll go to the last part of the beginning, and we're going to come up with our problem. So we have the mother puffling, she's searching for the food, she's poking her beak in the water, trying to find some fish, and now we have the problem. So go to this problem line, and you will ask to form the sentence. Who's causing the problem? Who's doing the action? A shark. So that's how we have to start our sentence right now when we're first forming it. A shark, action. What did the shark do? A shark popped out of the water and swam towards Mother Puffling. Ooh, that sounds great. We could have a transition here. For our transitions, we know that for stories, you could have a when transition, a where, a how, a sound effect, an emotion. Why don't we do a where transition? Because we want to say, where did this shark come from? So maybe we'll say, out of thin air, a shark popped out of the water and swam towards the mother. So I'm going to put the word out here, knowing I'm going to start with that transition. I don't need to write the whole thing down. I'm just having a word to jog my memory. Out of thin air, a shark popped out of the water and raced towards Mother Puffing. We have our beginning of our story. We orally rehearse it over and over again. When we sound pretty good, then we're going to go to the middle. In the middle of the story, notice we have some empty lines. The Those are places where we'll put our transitions as we form our sentences. We left our last sentence was, out of thin air, a shark popped out of the water and raced towards Mother Puffin. Let's say our next sentence, the first sentence in the middle of our story. Who's doing the action? The shark. None of police, good writers aren't going to keep saying the shark, the shark, the shark. I already said shark in the previous sentence. I need to wait at least one more sentence to say shark again. So what will I use here? I could use the subject pronoun it. Who's doing the action? It, meaning the shark. What action did the shark do? Now I could just say, try to eat the Mother Puffin, but missed. Or we could have a few action words. Let's add a few action words that would go in a row. Let's be the shark. The shark we know in the previous sentence popped out of the water and was swimming towards Mrs. Puffin. Now let's do 3 actions. What would the shark do as it comes towards Mrs. Puffin? It opened its mouth, revealed its sharp teeth, then snapped at the bird. Look at that. We had opened its mouth, revealed its sharp teeth, then snapped at Mrs. Puffin. So we will go over here and we will write our 3 verbs. Opened, comma, revealed, comma, and then we're going to say then. I could say and, but you're not doing this at the same time. These are actions that are going one after the other. Open the mouth, revealed sharp teeth, then snapped at Mrs. Puffin. We could just say it as our starting word. Let's go back and say the previous line on the problem. Out of nowhere, a shark popped out of the water and swam towards Mrs. Puffin. It opened its mouth, revealed its sharp teeth, then snapped at the poor little bird. Let's start this sentence with it. So notice I'm not always having transition phrases. I could just start with the subject of the sentence. In this case, I'm starting with it. She shouted, "How dare you try to eat a mother?" We have to add something to this dialogue. We have she shouted, but we don't know if she escaped. So why don't we add that phrase here? Barely escaping, she shouted. Now our reader will know that. Barely escaping, she shouted. And I'll make that lowercase. How dare you try to eat a mother? Let's go back and see if we can say the story again. So notice I'm constantly going back and repeating the story over and over. On a dark, gloomy day near a small uninhabited island, Mother Puffin dove into the ocean searching for food to feed her little baby. Her powerful wings flapped as she landed in the high, rolling swells of the ocean. Off in the distance, she could hear violent waves crashing against the island, which was surrounded by tall, thick grass that waved when the wind blew. Inside a long, skinny burrow was her baby waiting for that delicious meal. Out of nowhere, a shark popped out of the water and raced towards the Mother Puffin. It opened its big jaws, revealed its sharp teeth, then snapped at the poor little bird. Barely escaping, she shouted, "How dare you try to eat a mother?" All right, let's go to the next action. Who's doing the action? Mother Puffin. What did she do? Dove in the water, became tangled by seaweed while trying to catch a fish. We already had mother right at the end of that last sentence. So instead of saying Mother Puffin, we could say she or the mommy bird. Let's say the mommy bird. The mommy bird dove in the water, became tangled by seaweed when she tried to catch a fish. That sounds great. Do we need a transition? Yes, I think we need a time transition. Something to show that time has passed since she escaped from the shark. What if we use the transition, once she was out of harm's way, Mother Puffin dove in the water, became tangled by seaweed when she tried to catch a fish. Perfect. So now we know she's away from the shark, she's going to that next action, and she's tangled in the seaweed. The mother wondered, what will happen to me? If I drown down here, my baby will go hungry. Let's go to the next action. Who's doing the action here? A wave. It's not Mother Puffin, a wave. So a wave crashes down on the bed of seaweed, untangles Mother Puffin, and a fish pops into her mouth. So who's doing the action? A wave. Action, what happens? A wave crashes down on the bed of seaweed, freeing Mother Puffin, and at the same time throwing a fish in her mouth. Wow, that sounds really good. What if we said suddenly to start this? How did a wave, to make our transition, how did a wave crash down on her? Suddenly, a wave came crashing down on the bed of seaweed, untangling Mother Puffin and giving her a gift of a fish in her mouth. That sounds great. We have our entire beginning and middle planned out. Let's jump to the end. Before we do that, we'll orally rehearse the whole story. After orally rehearsing the story, then we'll go to the end part and say, who's doing the action? Mother Puffin. What did she do? She fed her baby a tiny little fish. Let's have a transition here. The previous action, she was out in the ocean. Now she's back at home. So I think we should say that. Back at home. So our transition is a location transition, a where. Back at home, she fed her baby Puffling a nice juicy piece of fish. The mommy says, I love you, darling. That doesn't sound right. Let's have a transition there to get to her saying, I love you. While the baby munched on the fish, that sounds better. The mommy said, I love you, darling. That sounds much better. Notice I'm adding that transition there now after I formed the previous sentence. Back at home, she fed her little baby a nice juicy piece of fish. While it munched, the mommy said, I love you, darling. Let's go to this last action here. Who's doing the action? The baby bird. What did the baby do? Snuggled up to its mother. Shall we have a transition there? Let's do that. Let's say after it finished eating. So after eating, the baby bird snuggled with its mommy. After eating, the baby bird snuggled with its mommy. We have all of our sentences here. Let's plan our story closing, our theme, our message of the story using TCR, transition, character, reflection. Transitions for that last sentence of the story could be forever after, in the end, from that day on, looking back. These are a few examples, and you keep adding to that list of examples for kids to use. So maybe we have looking back could be our transition. Character, who is this mostly about? Mother Puffin. So let's put her there. Looking back, Mother Puffin. R, reflection. Mother Puffin is going to look back at this experience and have a reflection. The message of the story, the meaning of this story is her reflection on what happened to her. So we're going to get the meaning of the story by saying how she felt, what she wished, or what she learned after this experience occurred. So we could have, looking back, Mother Puffin learned that her baby meant everything in the world to her. Mother Puffin learned that she was braver than she ever realized. Looking back, Mother Puffin wished that she could just go to the store to shop for fish instead of out in the dangerous ocean. That's a funny one too. Looking back, Mother Puffin felt lucky to escape all the dangers of the ocean. The children will come up with their own ideas, share, and they'll put down what they want. Maybe I have, looking back, the Mother Puffin learned, and I'm going to say that she was one brave bird. After we have our entire story here, we will then go back and orally rehearse it, saying it over and over many times. I will have the kids turn to each other and just read the stories to each other as partners as I walk around and listen to them. After orally rehearsing the story, I'll have my students draw a yellow line across the beginning, middle, and ending boxes to remind them that this is where they're going to indent. So here's our beginning box. We're going to indent right at the beginning of our story and start our story out and go all the way to the problem to create a paragraph for the beginning of the story. Because a paragraph is a group of sentences that go together about one idea. And in this beginning of the story, the whole idea is to make the character come alive, seem real, and have a problem. In the middle of the story, we have 5 sentences. So just looking at the length, if there were 10, then we could put another yellow line and divide this up into more than one paragraph. There's only 5 sentences here, so we're just going to have one line. When they get to the middle to write, this line will remind them as they're writing out their story to indent. And finally, at the end, we have about 4 sentences here. So again, we'll just put one line at the top to remember to indent at the end of the story. Once we identified where the paragraphs are, I will have my students turn with the person next to them, their buddies, and they will read out the story. While they're orally rehearsing, you can tell them, boys and girls, when you're orally rehearsing the story, if you come up with some fancy words, record them in your sentences. Notice I'm releasing the adjectives to the students at this point. When they orally rehearse, they can look at a sentence and they can say it and also go back and say, in this sentence, what was important? Do I need anything to describe? So let's say that they were saying the beginning of their story and they got down to the problem. Out of nowhere, a shark popped out of the water and swam towards Mother Puffin. Well, could I describe something? Sure, let's describe the shark. How about we describe what kind of shark would come at her? Remember, always say what kind of. How about a ferocious? Maybe I could describe what kind of Mother Puffin. Poor Mother Puffin, frightened Mother Puffin, and I could record that word if I want. Describing words are going to be added while students are orally rehearsing their stories. After students are orally rehearsing with their buddies, recording words, you're walking around and listening. At that point, you need to decide, do I need to pull one of 2 types of groups or both types of groups? A group who need to mark their organizer with their capitals, their commas, quotation marks, periods, all of their different mechanics, because you know when they write it, they're not going to include those marks. So we will put them on the organizer. You also will be listening to students for their language. If you know you have students who have a difficult time forming sentences from their organizer because they need more practice and help with their language, you'll pull a language group as well. And now you need to differentiate your students. So what will I do? I'm going to hand line paper to kids that show me that they are ready to write. Go ahead and start writing, and I hand them paper. I'm going to call a group of students up to my table to actually record their punctuation because I know they sound pretty good, but they need to record their punctuation. My group of kids that have difficulty with language, I may pick a couple of high kids to sit in a small group with my children who are still developing language and practice before I meet with them. So I'm meeting with a small group of kids who still need punctuation, if that's needed in your class. They're going to bring their red pen, their red pencil, or red crayon in order to record on their organizer the capitals, the periods, commas. So we'll go to our first sentence. On a cloudy day. Okay, let's put the word on there. Near an uninhabited island, comma. Because after my setting phrases, I need a comma. Mother Puffin landed in the ocean to catch a fish for her baby, period. We're going to go through and we're going to put all of our capitals, starter words, periods, all throughout this entire paper, only for those students who need it. So in this particular case, we had our first sentence. Then we go back and we say, as she landed, or her powerful wings. So now we're going to start with her powerful wings flap when she landed in the water, period. The high rolling swells of the ocean rocked her back and forth. So we'll put a period there. So I know this is going to be her first sentence, her next sentence, and maybe we say, off in the distance. So we'll put the word off there. Her in a skinny long burrow waited her tiny chick, period. Surrounding the island was tall, thick grass that waved, or the jagged rocks. So we could add those if we want, or we may just have a few sentences here. We add our capitals and our periods to our story opening, our hook, our come alive box. Now let's go to our problem. Out of nowhere, comma, a ferocious shark pops out of the water and swims towards Mother Puffin. We have our period. So again, we're just going to go and we're going to put are read on all the different marks that we need to remember. Once you have all of the punctuation and capitalization marked on your paper, have the students orally rehearse their story with each other, hand them lined paper, and they'll go back to their desks and write. Your children that need help with language, you will now work with them. They've had many rehearsals. They've been working together, practicing the story. You had a higher level student giving them some ideas, reading with them their story. You ask that student to go back to their desk and they're ready to write. Then you meet with this group of students that need extra help with language. You're going to, together with them, act it out, say each sentence, and then at this point, you may want to break the organizer up into beginning, middle, end, and even into chunks. Maybe we will practice our first sentence, then they will write it down. After they write it down, they'll practice their come alive box, a few sentences in their come alive box, then write it down. Practice saying the problem, then write it down. So you'll have some students that can say the whole story, then go back, say the beginning, and then just write out the beginning. Say the middle, write out the middle. Constantly going back, referring to their organizers. You'll have others that maybe need to chunk it into smaller parts. Practice it, say it, say it, say it, now write it. But what everyone should have in common is this. No matter if they're practicing a small part or a larger section at one time and going to writing, always make sure that when they go to write, that they still say the story. Because then they'll keep fluent, they'll make sure that it sounds right, and they'll stay with the organizer. Whenever kids plan on an organizer, then they go to write and they don't continue with the oral rehearsal. They try to memorize in their head what they need to write, instead of constantly going back and referring to the organizer. The whole idea of this organizer is for students to understand is this is where all your work is. You planned all your ideas, then you went back and planned all your sentences. You made this into a fabulous piece of writing, and your oral rehearsal is going to put it all together into flowing sentences. Don't leave the organizer. Say a part, write it, and as you're writing, say it. Then go back, repeat the organizer, say the next chunk that you're going to write. Say it a few times. Oh, that sounds good. Now start writing and talk again. Say it how you're going to write. As students are orally rehearsing and writing on their organizer, you're able to walk around the room and help students at the moment that they are writing things down, not collecting papers, correcting them, and then having to get them back, but right at the point, giving them feedback as they're writing down their different sentences, the different parts of the story. The sooner you can give feedback to a student, the better that they're going to learn and be able to fix and understand how to make their writing better. Here is our Stage 6 Imaginative Narrative Writing. Try all the steps with your class together, slowly release them to write as partners and on their own once they understand the steps and they can write their own story. Good luck, and I hope you like it.